Brace yourselves for the Middle-Aged Fat Lasses podcast. Welcome to this week's podcast. We are the two Sarahs, Sezl Simons, and this week we're going to be talking about fat. About the word fat, all the other words for fat, about being fat. We're consumed by fat this week, aren't we, Sarah?
Weltering in it, positively weltering.
I was thinking about how we should even go about talking about words for fat. You know, and I was thinking how you put that in separate categories. And I was thinking, do we say words that are to do with sexuality, voluptuous and curvaceous and all that? Or do we talk about words that are to do with animals? She's a fat cow, she's a heifer, all of that. So I wondered if we should separate it into words we like and words we don't like.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because I was thinking as well about words to do with fat that give you gravitas. So we've got our categories: animals, sex, insults, gravitas. Oh my God, and there's medical words as well.
Oh, they're lovely, aren't they?
Food as well. Porky. I was a teenage girl and I was getting changed in the living room, which I shouldn't have been. And my mother went, "Oh, that reminds me, I've got a leg of pork for Sunday."
Rude.
And how I laughed at the time, but it wounded me within and made me compulsively eat. So it's all her fault.
I think lots of us have been down that road with our relationships with our mums, haven't we?
We have indeed, yes.
How do you describe yourself now? If somebody said, "What shape are you?"
I'd say I'm a big un. That's come from my kids, because I still am a big un, but I was an even bigger un. And they used to go, "Ooh, she's still a big un." I lost 10 stone, which sounds incredibly impressive, until you learn I went from 28 stone to 18 stone.
I think that still sounds very, very impressive. At the moment, if I lose 10 ounces, I'm celebrating with a cream bun.
Well, I did put 5 stone back on. I'm trying to chip away at that again. Yeah, the kids used to go, "She's still a big un." And I like that. I like the idea of being a big un.
I like a big one.
What's your favourite?
I like being a big woman. Big girl feels almost apologetic.
I know, it's terrible.
But big woman feels like, yeah, she will conquer the world.
Yes.
She will sort you out in whatever way you need sorting.
A woman of size. Again, I like that one. Substantial.
Yeah, because you can think substantial size-wise and you can think substantial as in formidable.
I like fat as a descriptive word.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I talk about quite a lot to younger people is that actually you don't need to use fat as an insult. It's just a description. Kids saying, "Oh, you're not fat." "Oh, no, I wouldn't call you fat." "Well, I am. Just not a fat bitch or a fat cow or a fat slag." And it's that idea that the adjective fat is an intensifier. It's, you know, a cow is one thing. Being a fat cow is a totally in a different realm. So it's to take the sting out of fat. I like it as a descriptive.
Yeah, I do. I mean, we are middle-aged fat lasses. That is what we're talking on our podcast now. We are the middle-aged fat lasses. And that's completely cool. They're just descriptors.
Yeah.
And I'm totally with you about fat just being a description. It's not an insult. It's factual.
Yeah.
For some of us, it's factual and it is completely neutral.
Yeah, totally.
And that does make me laugh when people go, "Oh, you're not fat," when they say it to me. "Babes, I'm about a size 24. I'm 17 odd stone." That, by anybody's measures, is fat. That doesn't mean I think anything less of myself. It means this is just the size I am today.
I mean, that's my target weight. I would be quite pleased if I was 17 and a half stone. Oh, I have to tell you this story. So when I first realised I needed to lose weight, it felt like something that was completely beyond my control. And then I didn't want to know about it, didn't want to know my weight. So I finally got weighed and I was 28 stone. I was absolutely mortified. Just felt like, God, how could this be? How have I got here? And I went home and I said, I've got to do something. And I was seeing a psychologist at the time, and he was wonderful, really, really good. And I said, I've got to do something. And I said to the kids, "Look, I'm 28 stone. This is where I want to be." But I said, "Please don't tell Granny and Grandad." This was about 10, 12 years ago. So don't tell Granny and Grandad because it'll just upset them.
And your kids were young teens at the time?
Yeah, they were sort of 14, 15. Yeah. So no, they weren't going to say anything. And that day we went round to my mum and dad's house and my uncle came round, my uncle Tommy. Oh, you've met him, haven't he? Big Scots bloke, big exuberant bloke. He went, oh, he said, you'll never guess who came to the factory today. It was the King of Tonga. He's the fattest man you've ever seen. He's the biggest, fattest. You'll never guess how much he weighs. 27 stone. And the kids went, wow! They were all like, oh, can you imagine 27 stone? What would that look like? And I actually had to kind of smother them and get them out the door, bundle them in the car. Shut up!
The King of Tonga.
Yeah, fatter than the King of Tonga. That's actually a measure. And, you know, every now and again, my son will still say to me, you know, you're not far off Tongan royalty again. You need to be careful. Fatter than the King of Tonga. But there's a bit of me, right? And I know this sounds absolutely counterintuitive. There is a bit of me that is quite proud of having been fatter than the King of Tonga. It is a bit like somebody that's been up Everest. I've been somewhere where a lot of people haven't been. I don't want to go back there again, but I have been that fat and now I'm not. And I survived. I lived. It's fine. It's good. I didn't die. I wasn't one of those people. This is what drives me mad about dieting things. Like you see the before picture and it says, oh, you know, 4 McDonald's breakfasts and fish and chips for lunch and a pizza and 10 cans of Coke. That's not how you get there. It's a double helping of rice every single day and a Mars bar. And that'll do it. That'll do it over time. And then, of course, I think it should be much simpler than that to lose it, and it's not.
But then I get the right ump with before and after pictures because it's, to me, it suggests that everything that person was when they were at that size is not valid.
Yes.
Rather than that's just the weight that they were, that's just the size that they were. Everything else that makes them interesting and fun and clever and contributing in so many other ways doesn't matter that because they were fat. You know, and they may well have been really beautiful as well. If we're just talking about appearance, regardless of the shape or the size, they might have been a beautiful person.
Yes.
So to me, before and afters, those pictures, you know, need a bit of a booting. We need to look at it from a more holistic, a more rounded, if you will, perspective. See what I did there with words, Sarah?
I did.
I quite like being a round person.
Yes.
And I quite like being a big unit. Isn't that what the police describe? If they've to get somebody, if to pick somebody up who's large, if they've to go and get somebody in whatever way, it's a unit.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I might well be making that up, but even if I am, I'll still like it.
My son sometimes describes me as a big hoss.
A big hoss?
Like a big horse.
Oh, an
horse.
Like a big hoss. I like that, though. Oh, you see, in my head, as soon as you say you're a big horse, I think, oh, how lovely. I can see all your dark hair, all your wavy hair in the mane flowing behind you. In fact, you know what comes up? That advert for Lloyd's Bank where there's a big glossy black stallion dashing through the woods, being all glamorous and shiny. And yeah, I'm all up for that.
I've got another one to tell you. I teach, and I was once with a group of lads. Oh, there was a joke made where somebody ran out of a classroom and another kid went, run! And everybody laughed because the thought of me running was so hilarious. And I said, I'll need to speak to you about that later. And, you know, where I teach, the kids are farmers. So I had these lads afterwards and I said, right, I didn't like that. I thought you were being disrespectful. How were we being disrespectful? Well, it was the idea of me running made everybody laugh and you made that joke at my expense. And they started to laugh because they knew it was out of order. And then one of them said, but why would that be funny? And I said, because I'm fat. And they were like, no, I'm not fat. And I said, come on. If I'm not fat, what am I? And one of them said, do you know what, miss? I'd just say you've wintered well. Like a big old heifer in the byre.
You've wintered well. Oh, I love that.
I know.
That is really lovely.
So it's back to being that, you know, that prize-winning farmyard animal. Because let's face it, if we were heifers, we'd be bloody rosette winners.
Yeah, definitely.
And if we'd been born in the Ice Age, we'd have outlived it. We'd have maybe dwindled down to 12 stone over the winter, but we would survive and, you know, carry on. I like to think I have a very, very efficient metabolism.
We were just born in the wrong time, Sarah, weren't we?
I would have liked to have been one of those big matronly Victorian women that has 3 people to dress her in the morning.
Didn't they have corsets and that shit going on there, which I could not be arsed with a corset. The older I've got, the more I've thought, nope, never wearing anything that isn't comfortable. Nope, not having high heels, not having the sort of underwear where you feel restricted. Do you know, I went to a do a few years ago, and my friend came with me, and we were in the hotel room beforehand, and I was getting done up, and we were just about to go, and I said, mate, I think I'm having a panic attack. All of this. And she was going, are you feeling, is your breathing heavy? Turned out my bra were too tight. I was wearing an underwired, slightly longer line bra, and I didn't like that shit. No!
I'm going to top that, Sarah. I was at my daughter's wedding in very secure shapewear, and I thought I was having a stroke. I couldn't feel my feet and hands.
You couldn't feel your feet and hands?
Went to the toilet, peeled it off. Oh, thank God.
I just refuse to do that. I refuse to do that because I've done that for years and years, pouring myself into clothes and underwear that make me feel restricted and make me feel anxious, and shoes that hurt my feet. You know, I always used to have 4 5-inch heels on the whole time. Then I learned that actually life's lots better if your feet are uncomfortable. And then if your rest of you isn't uncomfortable, ow, lovely. I thought, no, not doing that shit anymore. So what if I've got several tyres stacked up? All my lovely back fat. Don't care. That's just the way it is. If you don't like it, don't look.
I do think I've got much more comfortable with not caring. And I do feel I've grown into it, though, a bit better. But the other thing is, getting older, you get more invisible. And I can remember, being in my 20s and 30s, walking down the street, people shouting out fat cow. I remember being followed by 2 men, fat bitch, fat cow. And in the end, they went into a McDonald's, and I went in and shouted at them and said, you followed me down the road, insulting me, how fucking dare you? And they just went, oh, you fucking mad. I don't get that anymore. And I do think that's maybe one of the privileges of being older, is just not being objectified in the same way that younger women are. Also, my understanding is that it doesn't matter what weight somebody is, they're still criticised. I read a thing a few years ago about Beyonce saying the worst time of her week is standing on the scales. I mean, she's the most beautiful, powerful woman in the world, and she worries about being fat. That's just tragic.
If somebody who the whole world agrees beautiful and powerful and everything, that lots of women aspire to look like, if she still thinks she's not good enough, what hope do the rest of us have?
And I know she's made a career out of being looked at, but it still made me sad.
So what about fat words that make you feel empowered? You've already used the word matron. If somebody says matronly, we know they ain't talking about somebody who's skin and bone. I really love that word, and I know you do too.
Yes, I do. I've got that sense of matriarchy, having a role as a mother figure. I like it. I feel it fits the size.
I used to run a community of teachers, of colleagues all over the country, and I used to ask them to refer to me as matron rather than the person who's in charge, rather than the person who's running it, rather than any sort of hierarchical thing. I thought, to take that away, to make it not feel like a work thing, they can call me matron. They know that I'm in charge, but they also know that I'm kind of undercutting myself with comedy. We all know Hattie Jakes as matron, the person who's meant to be a bit grumpy and the person who's meant to be, in charge, and you do what she says, but she'll also give you a little wink and she'll be in on the joke. It also kind of, in the most positive way, kind of infantilized the group. And, and I don't know how much it was because they were just, and still are, a group of really lovely people, that there was never any bother, which on Twitter is really unusual, for there never to be any fallings out or unpleasantness. And if there was, I could go in as a matron and go, right, hang on, we don't talk to each other like that, do we? That's not how it works here. Shape up. And because I was doing it within that context as she is matron, and I'd always say things like, oh, just pop me upside down watch on.
Oh, I said prick his boil.
I'm scrubbed up and I'm ready for action. But every time there was something that could be vaguely a bit naughty, somebody would just send me a picture of Kenneth Williams.
I always like the idea that, yes, the comedy fat bird is always after somebody like Kenneth Williams. Like, no, she'd see through that in a second, break him like a twig.
And also, comedy fat bird, I think, can be really demeaning, but it can also be really powerful. It depends how you want to frame it. And a comedy fat bird, when I was younger, I did find really insulting, and really, it kind of really chipped away at any sort of attractiveness that I felt. I think that was also because when we were younger, we didn't live in a world where people like Lizzo existed. It was like gorgeous and juicy and owns her sexiness. And, she's a big one, and it's not apologetic. It's part of it. And it's part of if you don't like what I look like, don't look at me. But you do know that I am gorgeous.
And plays jazz flute amazingly.
Yeah. While twerking.
Yeah. I'm quite jealous of her liberation and her openness and her. I do think I wish she had been around when I was 17. Things might have been very different. But when I did stand-up, because I did a little bit of stand-up for a while, about 20 years ago, but I used to introduce myself as a comedy fat bird. The reason I did that was because partly I was acknowledging a tradition, because there is a tradition of fat women in comedy, but also because people go, "You're fat." Oh my God.
As if you were going to go, who, me?
It's a secret. At the time, there were a lot of men in the audience. It was a very gladiatorial experience. And audiences now, I understand, are much more mixed. There's a much more diverse set of comics on stage. So men would literally tut. And my line would be, I can see there's men looking at the bottom of their pints thinking, oh God, it's a big fat lass talking about a fanny. Quite honestly, I came out of the house to get away from that. And that used to get a huge laugh. And it used to allow everyone to relax because I'd acknowledged it, that it's not okay, that this isn't what we want, but actually I know it's not what you want. So you can be free to laugh at it. And that for me was empowering. But, people going, you're fat, like, for crying out loud. So I just had to say it, own it.
A head teacher that I know, she told me about how recently a very naughty kid called her a fat slag. She absolutely owns who she is. She replied to the kid, well, yes, I am fat, but I've not been a slag for years and years. And when I was, it was marvellous. I thought, that's brilliant. I love everything about that. And the kid was like, gobsmacked, what's happened here? This doesn't add up.
I have to say, in a long career, fat has very rarely been thrown at me by kids. Certainly not to my face.
Same.
It's never been an issue for me with colleagues or with kids or with parents. Out on the street as a younger woman, it certainly was. But the other thing was, there was nothing to wear. Do you remember before the internet?
Yes, I do. Interesting, we can be teachers. I've taught for 12 years now and very, very rarely had anything to do with my size by some of the most, behaviourally challenged young people, some people who have very few boundaries but who would never comment on my size. And yet I was doing Coronation Street when I just left college. I was 21, 22, and it was always fat lass off Corrie. And the awful things that at that point it was Gary Bushell would write about me in the newspapers. Nowadays, nobody would have that. But then the only fat people in existence on the telly were Lisa Riley, Dawn French, Joe Brand,
yeah,
and on a much, much lower scale, me. I had nothing to wear.
There was like Evans Outsize, where you could buy a polyester tent.
Yeah, and that was really, really difficult because, invited to do posh do's where you're getting photographed, and so, you can't wear the same thing again and again. There was nothing, and it was really, really hard and really depressing. And I was sat about size 16, 18.
I remember when finding places where sizes went up, beyond what I was, sort of into the 30s. And I do remember there was a bit of me thinking, maybe that'll encourage people to be fat. Maybe if there's more clothes, what a thing to think, eh?
And that's conditioning, isn't it? That's the way it's being conditioned. That's where everybody's being conditioned. If sizes stop at 16 or 18, then anything more than that is unthinkable.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I think, well, you're not getting my money then, are you? Unless I sew two of your dresses together, there's fuck all in here for me. Years ago, what we're talking about, I'd just feel like I almost didn't deserve to wear nice clothes.
Yes. I can remember going to weddings when I was sort of in my 20s, and I mean, it wasn't showbiz dues or anything, but it was when my partner at the time was working at quite a sort of posh firm in London, and a whole lot of us got married at the same time, and they all had these weddings, like 4 weddings and a funeral weddings, you know, like everybody in cocktail dresses or garden party dresses. And it was such a source of anxiety and embarrassment. I might as well have wrapped myself in a cloak or something and put a big hat on, because I felt so exposed.
Yeah, they were really bad times to be a fat person, weren't they? I mean, we'd passed supermodels where it was cool for it to be curvy. I mean, I say curvy, they were about a size 10 at the biggest, weren't they? But they were seen as curvy, but it was after that, then it went to size zeros and the heroin chic, properly skin and bone models. So to be a big un during that time was like, I don't even recognise you as a person, never mind a woman.
Well, I always thought the whole Kate Moss thing in the sort of what was it, about 2005, when, you know, there was the whole Pete Doherty thing, there was the whole drugs thing. She was caught on camera snorting coke, and she was boycotted from the catwalks for about 2 years, and then she was welcomed back. And fair enough, that's fine. We don't have to demonize people for whatever their habits, but my God, if she put on 3 stone, they'd have never had her back. But then the other thing is, people who say they can eat what they want are envied. It's not about greed. It's about how you metabolize what you eat. Actually, I have to say, I don't believe those people, but that's another an argument for another day.
My husband and my son are both like that. They can eat anything they want and nothing happens to them. They're hungry all the time. They never stop eating. They eat everything and they just don't put on weight.
That is considered to be laudable. That's considered a positive thing. So it's not about eating a lot. It's about not having the temerity to burn it off properly. I tell you what I hate. I hate the word obese. And it's a technical term. And then morbidly obese. Morbidly obese sounds as if you're rotting away.
Don't sound fun, does it?
And I can remember when I was having one of my kids, it must have been my daughter, because I was bigger when I had my daughter. On the first page of my maternity notes, you know, those notes you carry around with you sort of anxiously to every appointment, a young doctor had written the word obese diagonally across the first page. When I was in the hospital having my daughter, one of the midwives, she was a big woman as well, and she looked at this, she went, oh my God, she tore it out, she ripped it up, and she said, quite honestly, if they don't notice you're obese, then they shouldn't be dealing with you. And she meant that in a positive way. She was like, there's just no need, is there? It feels like there's such anger, there's such hostility. I'm not doing it on fucking purpose. I remember my dad saying to me, he was 12 stone at the time. I was nowhere near 12 stone, I have to say. And he said, as soon as you get heavier than me, you're out this house. The dread was, don't get fat. It is so forbidden. But if you think I'm doing this because I want to upset you, then no, I'm not.
It's so complicated, isn't it? There's so many mental and emotional things to do with the reasons for being fat and for getting fat. You know, sensuality and pleasure and all of that sort of stuff. And the act of making food and preparing food, you know, the art of it and the craft of it. And addiction and abuse. It's all of those things. They're all jumbled up. It's not one thing. And when people say, oh, just all you need to do is eat less and move more. And you think, oh, thank you, fucking Einstein. If it was that simple, do you think anybody would ever be fat? It's so much more complicated than that. How dare you?
I know. One of the things that makes me sad about this, because I do get sad about my weight. I know that arithmetic and vigilance will be, you know, if you weigh it out, you portion it up properly, you plan ahead, then you will lose weight. I've done it before. I was talking to a guy who's a nutritionist who said, actually, most people who lose weight within 4 years of a big weight loss will put it all back on again and more. He said, for me, having lost all that weight 12 years ago and only putting half of it back on again is very, very unusual. And he said, you're something like 0.01%. You're an outlier. The reality is actually losing weight isn't difficult and isn't a mystery. It is maintaining it and keeping it off. I know it should be simple. I know it should be numbers, and it just doesn't work. like that. I've got all this knowledge about weight loss, really empowering knowledge and experience, and I can't fucking do it.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. And there is this idea that fat people don't have any of that knowledge. It's all through ignorance and stupidity.
Yeah.
If they knew that eating pies wasn't good for them, then they wouldn't eat pies and they wouldn't be fat. And it's so patronising, so patronising.
Have you been good? Well, I haven't murdered anyone, but you're top of my fucking list.
That's the thing with fat clubs. You know, I've been to just about every fat club. I don't like the whole attitude of if you eat certain things, then you failed, you're a bad person, you are worthless. And they don't say that, but it's implied.
Oh.
There's a brilliant one that I've been to, and I keep going back to actually, just to give me a bit of a starting motivation. And even though there's the whole idea that have you been good, the woman who runs it is so much fun and so welcoming and so inclusive, in spite of kind of the language that's drummed into that whole culture, that you just think, yeah, this is a nice place to be.
See, I can't cope with anything like that at all. I can't cope with that group scrutiny. I can't cope with people talking about what they eat and how they've lost weight. I find it really, really upsetting.
It can be really fucking boring as well.
No. I don't want to hear about your fucking shite meals that you've eaten over the weekend and expect me to applaud you for it. I have to walk away from things like that. Tend not to do it particularly discreetly.
Does your face tell a story, Sarah?
But there's always people going, oh, and then I had a biscuit. Oh, Christ, I don't care.
What you just said there, Sarah, might be another one of my badges. When you shout something without warning, and it makes me very, very happy. From all of these podcasts, my favourite so far has been melons. I think I'm adding, I don't care, to my Sarah's badges list.
I don't care.
So, to just kill the buzz, what is the phrase that you've been called that you find most upsetting? The words that have been used to insult you to do with your size?
Well, my ex-husband had a very unfortunate relationship with my weight. And he used to call me hippo as a term of affection, which actually I quite liked. But I can remember him calling me that somewhere, and my friend had to be restrained from garrotting him. But the thing he used to call me that I hated was Sumo. He used to call me Sumo. I find that really upsetting. And I don't know why I should, because actually Sumo is an incredibly powerful thing. One of the things I can't bear, and it almost brings tears to my eyes when I see it, is those fancy dress Sumo fat suits. I find it so upsetting.
Why?
Because he used that as an insult. And so that's that's obviously a very personal thing.
Do you think it's to do with having the femininity taken away?
Yes, I think possibly. See, I like hippos, and hippos are really dangerous. They're brilliant swimmers. They're very attentive, protective mothers, all of those things I am. But yeah, the Sumo thing used to really, I get embarrassed when people talk about Sumo. It's so visceral. What about you?
There's a specific memory, the worst ever, of me being insulted because of my weight. And it was when I was at drama school, so I was about 19. I was doing musical theatre. It was all about singing, dancing, all of that sort of thing. And there was a group of young men in our year, and they were all northern, and they were all straight. And they kind of all gravitated together because in the most stereotypical way, there weren't a lot of straight young men on the course, which I was delighted with, obviously. Anyway, these group of lads, because they were straight, they more or less could just pick who they wanted. And everybody just, measuring butchness in who spotted a Cuban heel the best. Measuring who we fancied by who was best at vibrato when singing a medley from Les Mis. Oh, it's all coming out, isn't it? Can you hear the venom in my voice? And the thing is, they were actually individually, almost all of them, quite lovely. It's just as a group, it was like this power group, which was difficult. And I had a huge crush on one of them, and I did for ages, and it was mortifying because, they went out with the most beautiful girls. the tall, leggy, gorgeous girls. And in this story, the girls should actually be bitches, but they weren't. They were lovely girls. It didn't fall in with the kind of teenage tropes. So anyway, I'd lost about a stone. I must have been 11 stones, 10 stones. But to be a size 12, a size 14 at that point, I was massive. The fat lass, fat bird, all of that, big un. And I went to this party. You know, I was feeling quite good about myself. I knew that I was a bit slimmer, and I'd done it the way that you do at that age by eating only an apple and Tesco's own 9p Diet Coke. And I remember walking into this party. The Northern Mafia were there. They looked at me, and this lad went, I was called Sarah Moffat then. He said, "You, Moffat, you've lost a bit of timber, haven't you? Looking good." And I thought, oh, that's nice, isn't it, that these boys have noticed. And then he said, "Don't get me wrong, you still look like a fat hog beast from hell, but you've lost a bit." And I just remember the room going silent. And it probably didn't, but I remember it as everybody laughing and then going, "No, that's a bit much, mate. You know, you've crossed the line a bit there." And I remember everybody laughing and then looking at me for my response. They felt bad for laughing. And I think probably they were shocked. And it included the boy who I had a big crush on. He laughed as well. And then I remember him saying, "Come on, mate," to the bloke who'd said that. And I just really, really remember it, because it was the idea that I was accepted and then I wasn't. I was beautiful and then I was ugly. You know, I was one of the gang and then, no, not good enough. And I remember pretending it didn't matter, pretending I wasn't bothered, and then staying at the party as long as I possibly could just to show that I was having a good time. And I remember having a terrible night. And it just really, really stuck with me.
Yeah.
The lad was fucking useless and he got kicked out, you know, within another term. So it's not that I had to put up with him for the rest of the time. Maybe he is still a fucking arsehole. Who knows? But he might be a lovely person. We all made mistakes when we were younger. That's really the worst time. And there've been other times, but nothing that is as bad as that. It's the cruelty of it. And it's a real one of those important memories. And I think, what would I do now if that happened? You know, I'm sure that I would say to him, "What is it that's driving you to say something that you know will be really cruel and really upsetting to me? What is it that you're getting out of it?" Rather than attack, I'd just question him and what it was about him that my sadness, my embarrassment, my shame made him feel good, made him feel important.
Yeah. You've reminded me of something that happened. It happened in 2008. My son was about 14 or 15 and he went to see Iron Maiden at Twickenham with his friend. And I drove him down and we stayed at my friend's house. I got really nervous about him going to this thing on his own. So me and her, there were tickets and we bought tickets, you know, see Iron Maiden, but not be near them, but just be in the same stadium in case anything happened. And it was just before social media. And I felt really, really uncomfortable. I was really, really big at the time. I was probably about 27, 28 stone. And I felt very ungainly and noticeable. And I was walking in with my friend, and this lad, he was a young man in his 20s, really good looking, long golden hair, beautiful, came up and went, oh, look at her, and ran in front of me and took a photograph with a camera and ran away. And they were all pissing themselves laughing. Now, nowadays, that would have gone straight on the internet. And I just thought, what? You actually think I'm not a person that's going to mind you doing that? And that sounds very similar to your bloke as well, that you have got no idea that I'm a human being. And you feel that my fat allows you just to treat me like a piece of absolute shite. And I was so angry and so upset. And I remember that more clearly than going to see Iron Maiden, which was an interesting experience in itself. But then the other thing is that people are so relieved when you lose weight. They're so happy. And I can remember people going, "Oh, you look amazing. You look absolutely amazing." It's like, I don't look any more fucking amazing than I've ever looked. I look like a tired and tidy middle-aged woman. I don't look amazing in the slightest.
Isn't that interesting that you say relieved? People are relieved, as if it should be a nuisance to them in any way.
Yeah. I remember a few years ago, there was a friend of mine on Twitter, actually, who I blocked because he just mooted the point, should obese people be allowed free NHS care. But actually, I feel really strongly about it. I've spent my whole life feeling inadequate because I'm fat, going to ask for medical help and being dismissed because, I'm dealing with end-stage arthritis. It's never been treated until the last 2 years because my doctor just went, oh, you just need to lose weight. Would shrug his shoulders. It's just your weight. It's such a reality to be overlooked. The turning point for me with a lot of things to do with my confidence was going to see my musculoskeletal man. And he said, right, do you want to tell me your story? And I said, well, I would have thought it'd be obvious. And he said, no, it's not. And I said, well, it's my size. And he went, I don't think it is. Tell me the story. For me, that was an absolute turning point when he was actually interested in the fact that I was born as an extended breech. I was born feet first. I had dislocated parts of my body when I was born. He was interested in my proper medical history. And he said some of it might have to do with your weight, but there's also a whole load of other things that absolutely haven't. And it's like, oh my God, that was the first time anyone had ever really said stuff like that to me. It gave me a huge amount of confidence to ask for support and help. And it was just a single line, just a single one thing.
It's kind of like an extension of the invisibility in it.
Yeah.
Being told again and again that your pain, your medical condition almost doesn't really count because you're fat. You've done it yourself.
Yes.
It's your own problem. It's another way of being invisible. You don't really count because you're fat.
Again, one of the nicest things that anybody ever said to me was an old mate of mine. We met up and I said, oh, I've put on a lot of weight. And he said, well, you're still Sarah and that's all that matters. And that was one of the most validating things that anybody has ever said to me.
Yeah.
And actually, you're one of the people that has said that to me. You've asked me questions. Why does it always go to your weight too quickly? And I have learned a lot from that.
Well, I think it's because, I was really devastated about my weight and about my size and what I looked like for a really long time. I was an actress for 15, 20 years. And you go to auditions where it was really clear that it was written down. Fat, unattractive roles you'd be put up for. And that's before, you think of it in the social culture of that world that is so to do with appearance and sexiness. You weren't allowed to be attractive if you were fat. And I think because it hit so hard with me, the way I was brought up, going straight into a profession that was all about your appearance. You were validated on whether or not you were attractive. You were more viable as a business proposition if you were attractive, which is ultimately what is going on in show business. It's the business part of it. And I took it all in and I just hated the way I looked. And that made me hate everything about myself for so many years. When I kind of finished being in show business and finished being in that arena, and I started really thinking about what makes a person, and really the outside shell is almost nothing to do with what makes a person. It's your mode of transportation. It's not who you are, and it's super exciting to decorate it. And I love drag. I love having my nails done and my hair done. But I went out last night, me and my husband went to the pictures, and I couldn't be asked putting makeup on and doing my hair, and I didn't. And it didn't make me feel any less. Maybe at some point in the week I'll want to do full makeup and do my hair nice. That's just because it's like a little project. And the more I've thought about it, the more I've seen like body positivity and all of those cultures come around, which is brilliant and really empowering, the more keen I am on body irrelevance, appearance irrelevance. That it's lovely if you want to do yourself up, it's lovely if you want to look this way or that way, but it's also irrelevant. It isn't who you are, it's just the outside. And I love seeing some of the new girls coming up that just won't have it. There's a young actress who's in Bridgerton and who was in the Derry Girls, and she absolutely won't fucking have it when somebody says something about a shape. And she's so articulate in going, no, we're not doing that. And I just think, you are wonderful. I wish I'd have been like that when I was 15, 20, 30, 35. I wish I'd have had that courage and that understanding, knowing yourself well enough to go, that's not okay. I ain't having that.
Yeah. As you say, the only people we ever saw were Dawn French, Bella Emberg. We didn't see women of size on TV or in films. Or if we did, they were a terrible victim.
Yeah, or they were the punchline.
Yeah.
I think Dawn French was the only empowered one that we saw regularly, wasn't she?
Yes. It does feel like more often I can see women who look like me, and I can see young women who looked like I looked.
I love that. So empowering and so important for people to see themselves portrayed positively in all sorts of different media.
Yeah, you know, you're not invisible. Isn't that a weird thing? The bigger you are, the more invisible you become.
Yeah, that's to do with age as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And I think we have talked before about how we'd be fucking brilliant spies or bank robbers because we're almost completely invisible. Don't even need an invisibility cloak, but if I did it, it'd have to be a big one.
I think big one's where we started out 15 hours ago.
In this podcast, we have covered... What have we covered, Sarah?
Words to do with fat. All our most bitter memories of people being mean to us because we're fat.
Bastards. In case that boy's listening, in case he's listening, you shouldn't have said that, you twat.
Yeah, and that arsehole that ran after me on the bloody... Fuck you, mate. I'll actually dig out the picture, put it on fucking Twitter, and I'll have you.
Yeah, let's find him. Let's find him and have him, says. We ain't having that no more. They can all fuck off.
I think there's been a certain amount of bitterness, sadness, and anger, but also...
I think it's absolutely within our rights to be angry about this and to be angry retrospectively. How dare they? How dare anybody think that they're allowed to put people down, to put us down, simply due to my shape? If they put me down because I'm a nasty piece of work, fair dues. But just based on my shape, no. And retrospectively, no. Oh, I've gone off on one again, haven't I? Sorry. I need a little lie down now.
Well, I hope this has been fun to listen to.
Does your body do what you need it to do? Brilliant. Do you enjoy making it look like you want it to look like, decorating it? Brilliant. All the rest of it, I'm not interested in being judged, not interested in negative opinions. So that's what we've covered today, isn't it, dear?
Yeah.
Right, we're going to go have a pie now. This has been Sezl Simons, the Two Sarahs podcast. And this week we've been talking about fat. So thank you very much for listening, listener, and we shall talk to you again soon. Bye-bye. You've been listening to the Middle-Aged Fat Lassies podcast. Subscribe now to make sure you don't miss an episode. And to find out more, visit middleagedfatlass.com.